Before Clint Eastwood ever squared off in a dusty street on screen, this stretch of Spanish coastline was quietly doubling as the American frontier. Almería stood in for Texas, Mexico, and the Wild West in over 300 films, from Sergio Leone's A Fistful of Dollars to modern productions like Game of Thrones. We're lifting off the Mediterranean shoreline to trace a route through the Fortress Hill, the Old Town, and the volcanic desert that turned this quiet corner of Andalusia into one of cinema's most unexpected backlots. Climbing toward the hill that dominates the entire city, we reach the Alcazaba, a 10th century fortress raised in 955 AD by order of the Cordoban Caliph Abdulrahman III. He named it Al-Mariet, the Watchtower, and with good reason. As we circle its triple-walled enclosure, the reason for that name becomes obvious, since every angle of the coastline is visible from here. This is the second largest Moorish fortification ever built in Andalusia, surpassed only by the Alhambra in Granada. Inside the walls, restored gardens and cisterns reveal how self-sufficient this citadel needed to be, built to withstand sieges for months at a time. Descending from the fortress, we follow a line of stone that snakes down through the less Barranco de la Olla ravine. This is the Muralla de Hayran, raised in the early 11th century by the Taifa king Hayran to connect the Alcazaba with the hill ahead of us. Little known fact, this is the longest stretch of Andalusi city wall still standing anywhere in Spain, a defensive spine still visible from above, more than 1,000 years after it was built. The wall leads us to the summit of San Cristobal Hill, crowned by a white statue of the Sacred Heart. Originally erected in 1930, it was toppled during the Spanish Civil War and rebuilt only decades later. From this altitude, the entire bay opens up beneath us, one of the few spots in Almería where fortress, city, and sea line up in a single frame. Dropping down into the tangle of streets below, we arrive at a building that looks more like a citadel than a church. Construction began in 1524, commissioned by Bishop Diego Fernández de Villalán, at a time when Berber pirate raids were a constant threat along this coast. The solution was radical. Build a cathedral with battlements, gun loops, and walls thick enough to double as a stronghold. Architect Diego de Siloé laid the groundwork before Juan de Orea took over, blending Gothic bones with a Renaissance facade. A temple that could genuinely defend its congregation if the alarm bells rang. A short glide east brings us over Plaza Vieja, framed by arcaded 19th century buildings in muted ochre tones. At its center stands the Monument to the Martyrs of Liberty, honoring a group of liberal rebels executed here in 1824. Locals still gather under these arches for coffee, protests, and festivals, much as they have for nearly 2 centuries. Hovering low over an unassuming street entrance near the city center, we're looking at the surface access to something entirely invisible from up here. Over 4.5 kilometers of tunnels carved beneath Almería between 1937 and 1938. Designed by architect Guillermo Langel Rubio after the city endured more than 50 aerial bombardments, this network could shelter up to 40,000 civilians at once. And today, it stands as the largest civilian air raid shelter system anywhere in Europe. Banking toward the waterfront, an iron structure stretches nearly 1,000 meters straight out over the sea. Built in 1904 and engineered by a Scottish firm for the Alkeefe Mines and Railway Company, the cable inglace once let trains loaded with iron ore roll directly to the edge of the pier, dumping their cargo straight into waiting ships. More than a century of saltwater exposure later, this rust-colored skeleton is still standing, a rare surviving piece of British industrial engineering on Spanish soil. Turning southeast, we follow the coastline as it grows wilder with every passing second. Cliffs give way to black volcanic rock, and the vegetation thins into something closer to Morocco than mainland Spain. This is Cabo de Gata Níjar, shaped by volcanic activity between 7 and 15 million years ago, and declared a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve in 1997. It's the only stretch of coastline in continental Europe with an officially protected semi-desert landscape. And as we sweep low over coves like Playa de los Muertos, it's easy to see why filmmakers and biologists alike consider this shoreline one of a kind. From a fortress that once watched over pirate raids to a coastline shaped by volcanoes millions of years before Rome existed, Almería packs an unusual amount of history into a small footprint. Which one would you touch down at first? The walls of the Alcazaba or the cliffs of Cabo de Gata? Drop your answer in the comments and stick around because our next flight heads north to a city carved almost entirely out of rock.